Boom. All right, what's going on, you guys? It's Royce Jacob. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about a few stocks that I'm personally keeping an eye on going into the month of June. This is going to be the first of two videos, the second of which I will be posting tomorrow. This video is going to be focused more around exciting names, some of the names the Waves family knows and loves, revolutionary companies in cutting-edge sectors of the market like crypto, EVs, cannabis, and we're going to focus on fun stuff in this one. Tomorrow's video is going to be very, very different, a pretty opposite end of the spectrum, and I will give you guys some clues as to what we'll cover over the course of this video as we dive into some of these names. But again, kick it off with the fun stuff, so let's get straight into it. As always, we'll quickly go over the names we're going to be discussing today, and then we'll dive into each one individually. In front of us, you guys know the drill, TradingView, where we will talk technicals, price action, and price targets on the following names today. In this order, going down the watch, so you can see right here, kicking it off with not a stock, but an asset that will heavily dictate the direction of a few of the stocks that we're going to dive into, which is Bitcoin. Okay, so Bitcoin, obviously after this, you guys know what we're diving into after. It's going to be RIOT and Mars, so RIOT Blockchain and Marathon Digital, both Bitcoin miners bouncing nicely today, so that may seem bullish going into the month of June, but as all of you guys know at this point, the crypto markets have gotten absolutely crushed over the past couple of weeks, bouncing a little now. But if you have been tuning in, you know that I'm still pretty hesitant. I'm still pretty suspect, a little sus on the crypto markets as well as the equity markets, because a lot of times the crypto markets can act as a precursor to the equity markets, specifically the tech, more high growth sectors of the equity markets. Okay, so again, we'll segue into what tomorrow's video is about a bit as we talk about Bitcoin, but also framing Bitcoin for RIOT Mars, because ultimately Bitcoin's price direction will dictate that of RIOT Mars to a certain extent. So after Bitcoin, we'll dive into the stocks, some of the OGs here on the channel, RIOT Blockchain, Marathon Digital once again. After that, we're going to switch sectors, move into EV, some very, very exciting, very promising plays with a lot of potential, in my opinion, in the EV sector. These are both OTC plays, which means over the counter. I personally use TD Ameritrade to trade these OTC stocks. Also on TradingView, that's what this little D in the corner signifies, is that it's OTC. You can't trade this on like Robinhood or something because, once again, it is over the counter. Okay, so ALYI or alternate systems and IQST or Inquisitel, that's how I say it. It's kind of different than that, but I just call it Inquisitel. Both very interesting plays with a lot of asymmetric potential, and you guys will understand why that is as we actually dive into the charts. Both have corrected very, very significantly, along with a lot of these names that we're talking about actually. But in terms of technicals, I do think all of these look good on the charts. Of course, I will do my best to tie in fundamentals as well. We don't have any articles to read over today, but the fundamentals are very important. And again, I want to talk to you guys kind of about both sides of the coin in terms of how I see this summer potentially playing out. So ALYI, IQST, we'll close it out with TLRY only covering one cannabis stock today, but TLRY and AFRIA merged. AFRIA was prior to the merger my single favorite company by far in the cannabis space from a fundamental perspective, and TLRY is great too. TLRY is an OG. TLRY was like the first company to go public on the NYSE, and it looks great on the charts. And again, I just want to talk to you guys about how I feel some of these revolutionary assets, smaller cap assets, could perform going into the summer. Okay, so that's all we're going to be covering. Before we get into it, as always, I will ask you guys to please give the video a like if you do go on to gain value from it today, or if you're personally trading any of the names we're talking about. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here and want to catch more content like this. Join the Waves fam, and of course, check out my complete portfolio daily newsletter. First link down in the description. $15 a month. If you guys want a complete breakdown of my entire portfolio, you guys want to know exactly what's in my portfolio, what it's comprised of, how it's weighted in terms of percentages. And I do update that every single trading day during market hours, all the trades I make that day. And with that update, I do send out an email newsletter explaining my thoughts, throwing some charts in there, letting you guys know why I'm trading the way I'm trading. Okay, so again, really means a lot if you guys check that out. First link down below, $15 a month. But if not, no worries. As always, let's dive into these charts. So Bitcoin looking a little funky right now. So I'll start short term, and then we'll zoom out, and I'll let you guys know kind of how I feel the rest of the month of May might play out, and maybe going into June, maybe when we see things start to kick back up and kick back into gear. Okay, so Bitcoin, get rid of this right off the bat. That is just for show. Bitcoin on a very short-term time horizon. It is May 26th at the time of recording. So Bitcoin kind of just played out an interesting little, not super symmetrical head and shoulders, but what I would perceive as a head and shoulders. Okay, so inverse head and shoulders is the evil twin sibling of the head and shoulders pattern, which is usually, actually the inverse head and shoulders is actually bullish, but regardless, is going to be shoulder head, shoulder, and yeah, you can see since the base of that first shoulder on May 21st, took about a week, took 5 days, I guess, to play out this kind of short-term inverse head and shoulders. Now that that's played out, I stand by kind of my belief with Bitcoin and the fact that it's pretty likely that we go sideways. We stay volatile between about $35,000, maybe $40,000. But if I'm being completely honest, and if we do see equity markets turn down, if some of the macroeconomic fundamental factors like rates rising and stuff do affect the equity markets, I do think that'll affect Bitcoin to the downside. So although we are talking about RIOT and Mara, although I love RIOT and Mara a lot long term, I have to be rational with you guys, and I have to be real, and I have to let you guys know what I think is more likely. In my personal opinion, I think it's more likely that Bitcoin does go down to about $25,000, revert to the mean, revert to that initial high of this rally, and then we ultimately come down to about $24,000 or $25,000. Okay, that said, it's also very likely we could just capitulate, go sideways for a little bit. After a big drop like this, it will take time for investors to regain steam, regain confidence in Bitcoin, and that same principle applies to many of the assets that we're going to be talking about. Although we saw some crazy bounces in this risk on, this kind of hyper growth sector today in the markets, it's still important to learn that we're just going to see a lot of volatility. And in terms of like general investor sentiment, from a longer term perspective, it takes a little bit of time for investors to regain that confidence in the assets that kind of just clobbered them. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially if you're watching this video, if you have been part of the Waves fam for a while, know exactly what I'm talking about there. Okay, so Bitcoin, again, framing that, I do think it's more likely, the downside is more likely than the upside. Best case scenario is like 54,000 in my opinion. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't think that's very likely for a lot of the fundamental reasons that I will dive into tomorrow as we talk hedges, commodities, and the equity indices as a whole. Okay, so that's a little spoiler right there. I'm sure a lot of you guys figured that's what tomorrow's video was going to be about. But $25,000 would present not only an amazing buying opportunity for Bitcoin, but for the entire crypto sector, because again, Bitcoin as the king will kind of dictate the general price direction of the majority of the crypto sector. Of course, there will be some caveats, there will be some exceptions, but for the most part, Bitcoin, if Bitcoin's dipping, then the rest of the crypto sector is probably going to dip as well. Speaking of the rest of the crypto sector and some potentially great opportunities, let's take a look at RIOT and Mara. So Mara actually looks very exciting on the charts right now. Mara not so, or RIOT does look like it has some potential. So I'll just talk to you guys about the two scenarios I see playing out for both RIOT and Mara right now. RIOT blockchain is obviously in a very, very stark correction, same as Mara. Actually, Mara was a little later because Mara did play catch up with the RIOT, if you guys remember that. So February 17th was RIOT's all-time high. Since then, we have been in a highly volatile downtrend, this massive descending triangle right here. And we have bounced nicely. RIOT today up almost double digits at one point today. We're seeing a little bit of volume come back. But because I do think Bitcoin is more prone to some downside price action as opposed to upside, I think RIOT is as well. Okay, so just start with the good and with the bad. That's kind of what we're doing with this two-part series in videos here, stocks I'm watching going into June. Best case scenario for RIOT is by like mid-June, if Bitcoin does pick up, that I do think RIOT can come up to test the previous line of support as new resistance. Okay, so I do think it's likely that this support, why is that drawn there? Wait, sorry. Okay, so that's, why do I keep grabbing that? Sorry, you guys. So this orange line right here is a very, very significant line of support on RIOT's overall uptrend beginning back in December, similar to Bitcoin. This line intersects with this line of resistance on the overall downtrend. On June 16th, those two intersect. That would take us to just over $40. Again, if Bitcoin picks up, if the equity markets don't see a slow summer, which they usually do, which historically they do, I do think RIOT can recover a little bit. That we just got that news from Elon Musk about talking to the Bitcoin miners about sustainability and more ethical green practices. So it is possible. I do think that best case scenario, if I'm being completely honest, for RIOT in the month of June is going to be about $40, which from $27 is pretty impressive. But again, because I do think there's more downside for Bitcoin ahead, I do think it's likely that RIOT will revert to the mean, similar to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's mean, reverting to the mean, which is what I talk about a lot. I don't necessarily say that, but when I use the initial high of the current rally as the floor. So a lot of times, again, that's what reverting to the mean is when an asset, after a huge run, after a crazy hype rally like we just saw in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, a lot of the time, especially once overall support is broken, which it has been for all of these assets we're talking about today, you will revert to the mean. You will revisit that initial high of the current rally prior to capitulating and resuming the overall long-term rally, which again, I do think will happen, but will take a little bit of time. So RIOT, in all honesty, RIOT and MAR very similar. I do think both will come down to about 15, 16 bucks. And at that point, that presents a very, very exciting buying opportunity and an opportunity to maybe dollar cost in, lower your average cost of the shares if you're bullish on the company long term. Okay, so that's RIOT. As you guys know, I will be talking about these names as throughout the course of the month. These are some of our favorite names of the market, so I will keep you guys tuned in to that. And of course, the newsletter will cover these pretty much every day. All right, so that is RIOT. Let's move on to Marathon Digital. Mara did break today a very, very, very significant line of resistance on the overall downtrend. Okay, so again, from its high in early April, Mara actually really outperformed RIOT for a long time. So Mara in a shorter term downtrend beginning at the beginning of April, touch point here, creating a line of resistance on the overall downtrend. Very, very stark downtrend at that. Mara did close the daily, a 4-hour and a daily, of course, above this line. So short term, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Mara bounces up because Bitcoin's in the red right now, and I do think it's probably going to be more red. Again, I am more prone to the downside. I don't think it's likely. I mean, I cannot see Mara getting back up to $50 over the course of June. That would be best case scenario. That would be Mara revisiting the line of support, the previous line of support that it did prove to use as a new resistance. We might visit that. That would take us to about 50 bucks, but again, you guys, just for all the reasons that I just stated, I do think the bear case is more likely, and I do think that Mara will also revisit the mean, revert to the mean. Okay, so $14 is Mara's initial high back in late December, and I do think that it's a lot more likely than not that Mara will ultimately see that prior to some sideways price action. Again, prior to investors who are bullish on this asset class long term to reaccumulate and reestablish some positions. Okay, so that is RIOT and Mara. Again, very potentially exciting buying opportunities ahead. So just stay tuned for that, you guys, and stay excited. Although it's tough. Again, it's been tough for a while now, but keep your head up, keep a smile on your face, and just learn from everything that happens in the market, because it's likely that you will be able to use these this learning experience, this straight up experience, to your benefit in the future when we see similar like hype rallies and FOMO rallies like this. Okay, so that is RIOT and Mara. That's closing it out with crypto. Let's move into EVs quick. ALYI and IQST. So ALYI and IQST are very, very similar charts. ALYI did break a very, very strong technical downtrend from its high way back in February, the good old days when ALYI reached 20 cents, now sitting just under 4 cents. So a very, very significant correction, of course. But ALYI did break technically a very, very strong long-term line of resistance on the overall downtrend. This is actually like a couple weeks ago now, so May 17th, not quite a couple weeks, but a week and a half or so ago, did break a significant line of resistance. Since then, been going sideways, really establishing a floor here around 4 cents. So in terms of asymmetric risk profile, you guys, which is what I personally look for. That's the primary thing I look for when I'm trying to establish, when I'm thinking about establishing a position in something. As far as asymmetric risk profile, which means that the upside potential outweighs the downside risk, I think ALYI is a great candidate because I do believe in the fundamentals of this company. Of course, go watch some of my previous videos if you're not sure what ALYI is. I did a few solo analysis on ALYI, kind of deep dives on the company itself, and I do think that later in the summer could start to get very, very exciting for ALYI. Again, because I'm hesitant on the greater market environment over the month of June specifically. It might be slow, but I do think that over the course of 2021, definitely by the end of the year, ALYI poses a beautiful asymmetric risk profile. So again, ALYI by the end of the year, it's definitely worth the risk considering I don't think the downside is very strong. I mean, downside, worst case scenario is going to be 2 cents, which is still like a 50% correction, which is pretty stark. But best case scenario could be, I mean, at least its previous high at 20 cents, which from here is obviously a 5x. Okay, so again, as we zoom out here, you guys can see these trend lines right here. These are the trend lines I do think will come into play. We're not really going to cover those yet. Maybe August, because July should be a big month if ALYI can hold up on some of their sales data and stuff. Some of the sales that are in place, if they can execute on that, then that's why I think July going into August could be very exciting. August 13th, just where my cursor is falling, where the end of this line of resistance happens to be, that'll take us to 32 cents. So that's very exciting. Again, we'll have to wait for that a little bit, in my opinion. As always, you guys, things could rip. I could be completely wrong on these, but I do think it's going to be a little slow for a while. And then as we close out the summer, things are going to start to get exciting again for these risk on sectors. All right. ALYI, IQST, very, very similar chart, as you guys will know once we see this. IQST also in a very stark downtrend from its high around the same time. So late February, IQST reached about $2 and is currently at about 50 cents. So very exact, like ALYI, IQST are kind of the new RIOT and MAR in my opinion. I don't think we're going to see these guys get to like $50 because that's just insane. But I do think that they could see some very exciting price action and that they will move similarly in tandem. So something I forgot to mention with the ALYI, volume is almost non-existent, which is very important when you're talking about stocks, companies with such small market caps. Okay, so volume is very important, marketing is important. They're going to need to get better at marketing. IQST is doing some pretty cool stuff. This is in the EV sector as well, kind of just not renewable energy. They actually do a lot of things, so it's kind of hard to explain exactly what IQST is. Maybe I will do an analysis on it eventually, but for now, you guys can just go look it up. But because I do feel like this is kind of the new RIOT and MARA, and how I did like exposure, as many of you guys know, to both RIOT and MARA, the same principle applies here. So I do personally like ALYI way more than IQST, and my portfolio does prove that. Shout out to the portfolio group. But I do like exposure to both, and I do think both are complementary to each other, and both will both have a lot of potential. Same asymmetric risk profile argument I just made for ALYI does apply to IQST as well in my eyes. Okay, so IQST also just broke a lot sooner, just May 24th, so just a few days ago at the time of recording, did also break a very strong line of resistance using the peak here in late February, this touch point here in late April, creating that line of resistance on the overall downtrend. And again, IQST a few days ago did technically break above that, closed the daily above it, and is now using that as new support. So you can see here, broke it, came up, bounced off of it, used it as support a couple times, and is now once again kind of capitulating just around this area around like 50 cents, okay? So again, both ALYI, IQST have reverted to the means. This initial high right here, that's what I like to see. That's usually the tell of again, the end of the correction, the beginning of the capitulation, the beginning of kind of that next wave up. Again, might take some time, but as far as longer term asymmetric risk profile goes, I'll keep saying that, you guys, because that's really the most important thing I view. If you are a long swing trader, slightly longer term investor like I am myself, it's all about just kind of, again, dollar cost averaging in, getting plays that you think have a lot of potential over the medium to long term, and just lowering your average buying price. Okay, so IQST, I don't know what's going to happen here. Similar, I guess similar line of resistance here. I do think that this will come into play if we rally again. Early July, just where this is falling, would take us to 3.5 cents. So, or I'm sorry, $3.50, which would be a 7x from this point right here. Okay, so very, very crazy potential. How confident am I in this? I do think it's very possible that we do see price action like this if all goes absolutely accordingly, if all falls in the best favor for these plays. But again, maybe things take more time. As always, you guys, things take time, especially after crazy runs. Capitulation takes a little time, but that's why right now, just prepare for the moves ahead if you believe in these companies from a fundamental perspective, if you believe they'll perform like I do, okay? So that is the EVs. Let's close it out with a quick cannabis play, TLRY. So TLRY has a pretty simple chart right here. TLRY getting absolutely clobbered since its high in February. What a time to be alive, guys. What a time for the Waves fam, man. Again, this is like the story that pretty much every high risk on asset in the markets has seen. So February, great times. Best time definitely for the Waves fam. But again, you guys, there's always things to learn from markets like this, from these cycles. This is cycles. I've done this many times before. Get a little better at it each time. I wish I was personally more better at it, but again, that's all you can do. You can learn. This is a long game, so just play the long game. Focus on learning, and you will, like everything else in life, get better the more you do it. So, TED Talk aside, from a technical perspective, I do think TLRY will likely, if we do see a rally, and again, this is all so dependent on whether the markets do continue up. If the equity markets do go down, like in all honesty, I do think they will, which is why we're covering the hedges tomorrow and some commodities, some safer, like safe haven plays in tomorrow's video. If the markets continue to rip, if risk on assets do come back, which is of course a possibility, you guys, we've seen it before. It wouldn't surprise me to see it again. If they do make a comeback, applies for all this. That's when we'll see all of these rally, obviously. But TLRY, from a technical perspective, I do think we could see rally to test like this very strong trend line right here. So this is the first trend line that I do think will come into play, is this lower one right here. Again, support broke that, really broke down. I do think that it's likely, if we do see a rally, that this trend line will once again come into play. That could take us by just to late, like end of June. That could take us to about $36, which obviously isn't anything compared to like 64, which it was at back here. But it's still very impressive price action, considering we're at 16, like 16, 17 bucks right now. So it's over 2x, right? Best case scenario is testing this, in my opinion. I can't see us getting to way up here again, if I'm being completely honest. But best case scenario, I do think is about $50. Again, early July, just to test this very, very strong trend line right here, which is actually this. I do think that this is best case scenario. So mid-July, if TLRY crushes it, if AFRIO crushes it, again, AFRIO is probably my favorite company from a fundamental perspective, financial perspective in the cannabis sector. I do know they have potential from an operational perspective. So best case scenario by just mid-July, just again, where my cursor's falling. These are completely randomized, completely based on trend lines. So close it out by saying, you guys, be safe in these markets. Stay cautious. I'm staying very cautious. I'm definitely on offensive defense, and again, we will dive into that as I get into hedge plays and kind of puts, calls on hedge ETFs and put options on certain things. So again, always going to TradingView for yourself, draw your own trend lines, keep an eye on these things, and again, just stay on your toes, play it safe, and if you believe in something long term, like many of the plays we're talking about today, view these pullbacks as opportunity. Corrections are healthy parts of every bull market, and if you are confident in these companies over the long term, over the long haul, it gives you a discount to average down your buy price on said assets. Okay, so we'll call it there, you guys. Please let me know in the comments down below what stocks you're excited about, what you think will happen in June. So again, tomorrow we will open up the more fundamental conversation, but this market is absolutely crazy, you guys. These could rip. These could start going back to the moon tomorrow for all we know. So please let me know. Please share your thoughts on the overall market environments, as well as what your favorite sector is, what your favorite stock is. If you could only pick one stock right now going into the month of June, what would it be? That's a fun one. So I'll catch you guys in the comments downstairs. Until next time, always remember, take action, make waves. Peace.